Good evening, Daf Kuf Yud Tet, 33 lines down. We're continuing a little bit in the concept about someone who steals from somebody else is considered stealing from their life. Whoever steals any amount of money from his friend, it's as if he stole his soul. The Pasuk says, this is the Pasuk we brought down yesterday that the other rabbi brought up. It shows you that the victim is the one who's getting his soul torn apart by the robbery. The Omer. Then it brings another pasuk, and we're going to bring down a few of them. And we mentioned before throughout our journey through Shas that whenever they're bringing proofs from Pisukim, and it says the Omer, as in I have another pasuk for you, the Gemara is going to have to explain why do you have to bring more than one proof. If it's a good proof, just say that pasuk. Why do you have to bring additional? We're going to bring additional pasukim, and we're going to explain why we needed each one. So we bring another pasuk. It's a proof. They will consume your harvest, your bread, and they'll consume your sons and your daughters. Meaning, if you steal and they steal from you, it's as if they're stealing from your kids. They're stealing your actual kids. The Omer, another pasuk. Mehamas b'nei Yehuda asher shavchu dam naki ba'aratzam. Very, very spooky pasuk in the times that we're in. It says Hamas. They slaughtered the children of Yehuda, their blood in their land. Hamas can also mean people who extort and steal. So that's what the pasuk is referring to. But if you read it, the pasuk as face values, pretty scary for what we're going through right now. So we see over there, stealing is considered slaughtering blood. Another pasuk, El Shaul ve'et bet hatamim al asher hemit et hagivonim. On the account of Shaul and the house of blood that he killed the Givonim. So now we're going to go one by one, pasuk by pasuk. Why did they bring additional pasukim? So if the first pasuk, why? Maybe you might think that only it's the soul of the victim, the guy who got robbed, and that's it. Therefore, no, maybe it's not maybe you're not considered stealing the soul of his children. Tashma, therefore, bring a second pasuk, to teach you that you're also stealing the soul of his kids. Maybe you might think maybe only that's the case where you stole it without compensating him at all. Maybe if you gave cash for it, it's not considered stealing because at least you paid something. Therefore, the pasuk we brought the concept of Hamas, extortion. That's the Hamas we brought before. That the person takes your item and hands you cash, says thank you so much for selling it to me. It doesn't give you a choice. So even in that scenario, it's considered you killed the guy. That's only where you did it physically. But indirectly it won't count. But the last pasuk, El Shaul on the account of Shaul that he killed the Givonim. Now, did he actually kill the Givonim? No. Rather, because he killed the city of Nor of Kohanim in his rage. The Givonim were feeding them water and food. The Torah includes it as if he killed them. So we see even indirectly, you're still chayav. Okay, now we're going to come back to our regular programming of our Mishnah. You're allowed to buy stuff from women, and there's different ways to tell whether or not they're selling it with permission from the husband or not, and that'll be a difference whether or not to buy it. Turn over down. You're allowed to buy from married women woolen garments Yehuda, and linen garments in Galil. But you can't buy wine, oil, or flour from them. You can't buy anything from slaves or children because you never know what they belongs to them or not. Abba Shul says, a woman it can normally sell 4 or 5 dinars worth of things in order to make herself a head covering. Right? The husband allowed that. Don't think they're stealing it. And in all cases, once they tell you, I'm selling this to you, but don't tell anybody or hide it, asur, because that's obviously doing without permission. And charity collectors can accept something small from women. But not something big, because if something big, the husband may not let. And regarding olive pressers, you could buy from them the wives of the olive pressers. You could buy olives in large amounts and oil in large amounts, but not small quantity. Because if it's large quantity, the husband's aware. If it's not, if it's small quantity, maybe they're sneaking it out and it's stealing. Rashba Gomer, Lochin Menashim Zetim Bimuat Begalil. You could buy from married women olives in small amounts in the Galil, because oil is expensive over there, and therefore, even if it's small, they must have had permission. The reason why his wife's selling it and not himself is because the guy is embarrassed to sell stuff from his house. Then it gives it to his wife to do it. So therefore, that's why she's selling it for him. Ravina one time went to the city of Mehuza. The woman of Mehuza came before him and gave him golden chains and stuff and bracelets, and Kabim and he bought it. The asked him 1 second. You can only assume that it's something that belongs to them only if it's a small thing, but you're buying big stuff from them. Maybe the husband doesn't let. I told him, these items for the Mehuza people is considered small. They're very wealthy and therefore it's considered small. Last Mishnah of Masechet Bava Kama. Ham mochin shehakoves motzi hare elu shelo. So a launderer who's laundering wool garments, those shreds of wool that come off belong to him. If he's soaking it, he could keep it. If you're back then they had a craftsman called a tizeler for garments and wool. And the art scroll goes into great detail about it if you're interested in picking it up. But it's a type of craftsman regarding wool. So the shreds that he removes, the owner gets to keep because it's bigger. Koves notel shlosha hutin ben shlo. The launderer, when he's washing it, he can keep 3 threads, up to 3 threads, and they belong to him. Anything more than 3 belong to the owner. If it was black and white clothing, he can take off all the black threads and he can keep it to him because the owner doesn't care about that. If the tailor left over enough thread width to sew, there's enough thread left over to sew something else. We'll explain what that means. Or a piece of cloth that's left over, that's 3 fingers thick by 3 fingers thick, that belongs to the owner. That's considered substantial. A carpenter using a tool called an adze, ADZE. It's like a it's like a bootleg type of axe. So there's a certain type of tool that a carpenter uses to shave off an item. Belongs to him because it's very small. If it's like a hammer, like a hammer, a hatchet, it belongs to the owner. But if he's working in the owner's property, even the sawdust belongs to the owner, right? So if it's by the carpenter, small pieces belong to him, big pieces to the owner. If it's by the owner's house, even the tiny sawdust belongs to the owner. Okay, Gemara, we buy shreds of wool from the launderer because they belong to him, right? You don't have to assume that he stole it. The launderer takes 2 threads from the garment and they belong to him. Big problem because our Mishnah said 3, up to 3. Next, you should not sew more than 3 stitches per loop. Right? When they're attaching it to the item, they attach it from side to side and they put 3 separate loops on the sides. That allows it to be taut and able to sew on it. Don't do more than 3 because that will stretch it out too much and you'll ruin the garment. You should also not treat the garment vertically, like horizontally. Also, we'll explain why. And you should even it out along the length as well. Don't even it out along the width. All these reasons is because if you do it widthwise, you are basically treating the whole garment across the whole width, and that will cause the garment to fall apart. You're treating it too much, you're spinning it too much, the thread, and the garment will get ruined. All right, so we're learning some tailoring halachot. Amar more. Now we have a problem. What we said earlier, Shnei Hutin, the launderer can remove 2 threads of the garment. But our Mishnah said 3. The Gemara says not a kasha. La kasha. When you say 2 threads, it's talking about thick threads. 2 is substantial, and therefore you can't take it. But habekitne, well, our Mishnah, it says 3, it's talking about thin ones, and that's why you're allowed to take 3, because 3 is non-substantial. Okay. Another problem. The Braita says that you should not treat the garment lengthwise, rather widthwise. But the Braita says the other Braita says the opposite. So which one is it? Length or width? We have one Braita saying one says the other. One says lakasha. Habiglima. When it says you can't do it, it's referring to a regular piece of clothing. A regular piece of clothing, if you treat it too much, it'll fall apart. But the second one's referring to like a let's say like a fur jacket, which doesn't be used as frequently, and therefore it could handle more work on it and won't fall apart. Okay. Next part of the Gemara, one should not sew more than 3 stitches per loop while setting it up. Gemara says, right? So when we say you're making 3 loops, a loop means you take the stitching, right? I have to learn this because I never stitched in my life. You take the needle, you go in once, out once, in once, out once, in order to make a full loop. But the problem is, the one says, who says maybe it's referring to one stitch is referring to when you put the thing in through once, that's considered 1. And then when you're putting it back in to make the loop, the full loop, that's maybe considered 2. So the one says, right, so which way do we look at it? Is it 1.5 or is it 3? How does passing it through and bringing it back counted as 1? Or passing it back and forth is considered 2. When it says teku, we're not sure. Next, you have to do it length but not width. But I said the opposite. Same question as before. Same answer. When talking about the cloak, and therefore the length is visible when you're wearing it, and therefore you have to be evened out better. And the second case where we're not worried about the length, you're doing it the width, is because you're wearing a belt, and therefore the length is not being visible. Next. You cannot buy shreds of wool from the Tiesler dude because it doesn't belong to him. But in the place where we let the guy keep it, let's say certain cities have the rule that the Tiesler guy can keep it, you can buy. And even in the places you're allowed to buy it, even in the case where you're not allowed to buy, if he's selling you a pillow, the cassette or a mattress, you can buy it, because once he changes, even in a place where you're not allowed to buy it, but he used it already to make something out of it, like a pillow or mattress, you're allowed to buy it from him because he changed the image of it. He changed it from threads into a full pillow or mattress, and therefore he already acquired it. You cannot buy from a weaver. The following are all pieces of and instruments and items that are used for sewing and weaving. Not woolen stoppers, woolen yadin, or something called the heddles, the lo pumkalin, and not these things that they use for the loom of the tapestry. Pikiot, and not leftover thread, because you might assume that he stole it. You could buy from them a mixed up garment, like a multicolored garment, even though it looks like he patched it up from different wools they may have stolen, because once he made it into a garment, it's considered stolen, and therefore it belongs to him. Or you could use the thread that he used, or spun thread as well. So the Gemara asks the question, Amri, Hashte Tavui Shakli, if you're able to buy spun threads, Arug mi buy, if you should buy woven threads, meaning a spun thread means it was wool, woven, spun. So if you're able to buy spun, so you're able to buy woven, it's already done. Why have to bring 2 separate cases? The Gemara says, no, my ari, when it says woven, is referring to tike. It means chains, but it wasn't spun yet, right? So Rashi explains that there's like 2 separate halachot going on here. So if you're spinning it, that's already considered a physical change, and therefore you're able to buy from him. And also, even weaving unspun wool, so if you said spinning changes it, you're allowed to buy it, but even unspun, if you're weaving it, it's also considered a change, and you're allowed to buy it from him as well. You cannot buy from a dyer, not testing wool that was used for testing like you take a piece of wool from the guy, you show him the color of what you're dyeing. And not color samples. Not torn off shreds of wool. You could buy from them a whole garment that was already dyed, because that's considered a change and therefore belongs to him. And you could buy spun threads or garments. So Gemara says, Hashter tavu shakil. If you could buy threads, begadim buy. Of course, you could buy garments. That's even more physical change than a thread. Gemara says, my begadim, when it says garment, was referring to namte, felt, and felt is not spun; it's felt is pressed, and therefore is teaching you whether it was spun into a garment or it's made into felt by pressing wool. That's also considered a physical change, and you can buy it. Someone gives hide to a tanner to tan. The trimmings of that hide and the torn off pieces of wool that he tore off of it belongs to the owner. The wool that comes out of the water rinsing also so that belongs to the tanner because the owner doesn't want that back. Okay, we said in the Mishnah, if the shahor of the item was black, he can keep it. Amr Rida, kasara shemhe, the kasara shakila. The launderer is called katsara, and the reason why is because he shortens the things that he shortens from the hide belongs to him. Marida, hakol arlin leminyan techelet, all the threads that the launderer takes off in hilchot of sisit belongs to part of sisit. So what does that mean? It means that even though in our Mishnah you're able to take it off, the launderer is able to keep it. However, in regarding to techelet, in regarding to sisit, they can all be part of the sisit to make it kosher, part of techelet. My son Yitzchak, however, was makpid not to use that as part of the techelet. He would add extra techelet instead of that because he wouldn't consider it part of the sisit. Okay. The tailor left over enough thread to sew, it belongs to the owner. So we said, what's the measurement? Now we're going to explain. What do you mean enough to sew with? A needle's length and then some beyond the needle. Because if you're sewing, you need the needle's length to put the actual thing through. But if you want to continue sewing, you need something past the needle as well. So you have to have something past the needle. So the Gemara says, 1 second, that extra part outside past the full needle, does that mean a second needle's length? Are we talking about 2 needles length? Or maybe even a minute amount after that first needle. If the tailor left over a thread less than the amount to sew with, or he left over a piece of cloth less than 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths, if the owner cares about it and he wants it back, it belongs to the owner. If the owner does not want it back, belongs to the tailor. So the Gemara says, it makes sense according to the opinion that says that it's referring to 2 full needles. It's 1 needle and 1 needle length of thread. Because less than that is able to be used for stitching. You can't make something new with it, but you could stitch. But you want to tell me that it's even a minute amount after 1 needle, but that's it. Less than that is useless. Because you said if it's less than that, but less than that, we useless. Rather, must be talking about 2 needle-sized pieces of thread. Good proof. Next part, Harash regarding the carpenter. We're gonna have a problem. The shavings of the carpenter removes with his adze and whatever other pieces of wood that he chops off with a saw. Belongs to the owner. But the dust that comes out from the drill, or from a tool that he uses, or sawdust that was sawn away while sawing, belongs to the carpenter. But our Mishnah said it belongs to the. Our Mishnah said that when you use the adze, the item belongs to the carpenter, but the Braita now is saying belongs to the owner. So which one is it? In the place of our Mishnah, there's 2 types of tools. The larger one was called an axe, like we call it. But the smaller one, is called the adze, like we said. But regarding the Braita, only 1 tool, the bigger one. And that's why they called it the adze. So when our Mishnah said that you can't use the adze, it's because it was the owner can't. It belongs to the carpenter, the adze, because that was a small piece, and the small pieces go to the owner. But it's to the carpenter, sorry. But the Braita, it's a big item. Big items go to the owner. Last part of the Mishnah. Second last part, sorry. If he's working by the owner's property, the sawdust belongs to the owner. Those who chop stones, they could keep the pieces that come off. Ilanot, someone who cuts the trees, he shaves the trees. He shaves the grapevines. He does the thorn bushes. Where he weeds out the grain. And prunes vegetables. If the owner wants it, you are chayav in gezel. You can't take it. In the owner doesn't care. It belongs to the worker, right? So if your guy who does your lawn starts taking the grass, if you want it, you better stop him. Otherwise, he could keep it. Hops and grain are not considered stolen. You could keep it. The Gemara in much earlier said that you cannot actually touch it. So it's a big stira. And answers that over here is referring to stuff that you didn't plant. It grew by itself and it's not good quality. So you're allowed to take it. But if the owner wants it, then you can't take it. Amar Ravina. The people of Mechasya were stingy.
Let's say that for the siyum, you know?
Yeah, so we'll do the hadran if we do a sim together.